What is the strangest thing you've seen that you cannot explain? Living in a dorm, no roommate, night before 2-hour open book final. I put my book in the middle of the floor so I'll stumble over it on the way out. The floor has nothing else on it. In the morning it's gone. I look all over the room. Can't find it. I think I'm hysterically blind. So I feel over every inch of the floor with my hands. Nothing. I go get a cup of coffee and come back. Still nothing. By now there's only 1 hour for the test. I go anyway and do the best I can. Naturally when I get back the book is in the middle of the floor exactly where I put it. Probably a prank. But how? I'm not that heavy a sleeper. Nobody took credit for it. Not exactly seen but it's strange. I was around 6 and on Wednesday evening I went to bed. I woke up and it was Friday. I remember asking my mom why is it Friday when yesterday it was Wednesday. She said yesterday was Thursday. Obviously, I asked her what I did on Thursday because the last thing I remember is going to sleep on Wednesday. She named some activities and I remembered none of that. I never found out why I don't remember the Thursday. Years ago, when my wife was pregnant with our second child and about to give birth, my mom came to stay with us for a few days to help take care of our oldest child. One early evening mom asked for a pen, paper and an envelope. When I gave them to her she wrote on the paper, sealed it in the envelope and gave it to me, saying put this in your pocket and don't open it, you'll know when. She said. 30 minutes later my wife announced it was time to go to the hospital. She was in labor. So we did and about 9 hours later our second daughter was born at 3:45 am. She weighed 8 pounds, 11 ounces and was 20 inches long. This being pre-cell phone days, I called my mom from the hospital to tell her the news. She answered the phone and immediately said, "Before you say anything, open the envelope." I did. It said, "Girl 3:45 am 8 pounds, 11 ounces 20 inches. I kept that paper for years. When my mom died, I went to our documents safe where we kept it, but it was gone. I saw a beer bottle dropped from a 13th floor window into bricks and it bounced. So in 2013, I was smoking a cig with my buddy and his schizophrenic neighbor in Denton, Texas. This neighbor was the nice kind of off, never acting mean or violent, so we were actually pretty good friends. Anyway, during the middle of the cig, the neighbor acts like he just got hit with an energy wave and runs out into the yard. He begins to start rhythmically dancing and chanting about the meteor. What I could understand was that he felt a meteor, and he said that he felt it falling. And then with a final jerk, he said the meteor had exploded. At that same time, on the other side of the world, an enormous meteor exploded over Russia. If you are wondering, no, there was no advance warning. And yes, part of me does suspect that he somehow knew. I think this is just a coincidence but it's weird nonetheless. I can summon, I don't know a better word for it, a boy to message me. It's one specific boy who was a close friend when we were 12-13. Once we left to go to high school, we kinda lost touch. I think about messaging him sometimes and usually within 10 minutes I'll get a message from him. It's really bizarre and it only happens with this one dude. Once we didn't talk for a year and then he messaged me randomly after I thought about reaching out. I asked him why he messaged and he said that he felt a weird feeling wash over him and it's like it pushed him to message me. It's really bizarre, although probably just a coincidence. It wasn't what I saw so much as felt. I was on my way to Petersburg, a small island in Alaska, but the runway was too foggy so I had to stay in Juneau at a hotel for the night. Anyway, the next morning I was sleeping and had my hand dangling in between the bed and the wall and I swear on everything I felt something grabbed my hand. It had a grip like a very firm handshake and it literally woke me up out of a dead sleep. I actually got up and checked under the bed and nothing was there. It was very weird. Was sitting in my lounge room alone one night watching TV. Heard clear as day someone coming up the stairs barefoot. I thought it was just a family member coming up the stairs but then had the realization that I was home alone. For some reason I just sat there looking at the doorway waiting for whatever was coming up these stairs to walk through the door. Heard the staircase creaking and everything. Heard the bare feet get to the top of the stairs, step onto the tiles and take the 3-4 steps it would take to be in sight of the doorway to the lounge room I'm sitting in. but nothing came through the door. Sat there for about 5 seconds waiting. Said to myself out loud, F dealing with that right now, and kept watching TV. I've heard other things like glass moving and footsteps and all that, but the second most notable thing I can't explain was me and my mum hearing something talk to our dog downstairs in a like mumbled male voice we couldn't understand. If I heard that on my own I'd have just thought it was my brain playing tricks, but my mum also heard it. I was driving away from a gas station. Out of nowhere a guy in a suit comes running up to my minivan and starts yanking the door, as if he knew me. He began pleading, "See Monday, let me in." Luckily my doors were locked. I asked him who the hell he was through my window. He looked genuinely surprised that I wouldn't let him in. After I refused to let him in, his facial expression inverted, as if he just realized something horrible. He let go of my car, said something to the effect of, "You're one of them, aren't you?" Then he ran away behind the gas station and into the woods. Full suit and tie, nice shoes, extremely frantic in nature, zero explanation. I'm praying it was some elaborate troll or meth or something, because the look in that man's eyes was pure terror when I didn't let him in. Was driving home from work one afternoon with my brother and cousin in the car. As we were sitting in traffic I noticed high up in the sky and way out in the distance a small motionless black square. I pointed it out and both my brother and my cousin spotted it quickly, so I know it wasn't in my head. It just remained still for about 45 minutes and then the sun had set and it was too dark to spot it any longer. It just stayed in the exact same spot the whole time, and while it was really far away you could still tell it was a perfect square shape. Once I got home I went online to see if there were any mentions of it anywhere and there was nothing. To this day I still think about it and wonder WTF I was looking at. I had a similar experience few years ago. Big black square up in the sky on my way to work. Bothered the hell out of me. Few days later I saw it again. Said F work. Gotta go chase that thing. Got close enough to see it was a cylindrical hot air balloon. Boss didn't quite understand, but was pretty easy going. That being said, I just did a quick Google and can't seem to find mention of it online. That was in Saskatoon, Canada. My 3-year-old daughter walked up to my husband one night and straight up said, "Grandpa's dead." Few moments later we get a call from my husband's sister saying that their father had passed away. Happened a few months back. Still creeps me out. I feel like the 3 and underage can be super creepy. When my son was not even 3 yet he came to my room and kept telling me the lady was in his and his sister's room. I was half asleep and dismissed it. Told him to snuggle up in my bed with me. So he got in my bed, but every few minutes kept waking me up to tell me about the lady. Then he says she is at my bedroom door. So in an effort to show him there is no lady and we should just go back to sleep, I pick him up and walk him in the dark out of my room. We stand in the hall and I say, "See, there is no lady." He points his finger down the hall where there is nothing to see at all and says, "Mama, she's right there. That's the lady. And this is her house." Nothing. Not even a shadow where he was pointing. I kind of just tried not to show he was freaking me out and said okay, she must be a nice lady, and took him back to my bed where he promptly fell asleep, and I stayed awake 4 hours thinking this lady in my 100+ year old apartment must be hanging out watching me sleep. Outside my bedroom window was a paddock, and one morning I saw a rabbit running across towards the woods behind the paddock. It was a minimum of 5 foot tall. Squirrel wearing a leaf cape. As a full-grown adult, I was telling my mother about this house I was in with a dream I had. It was brown, had 2 bedrooms, 2 floors, L-shaped stairs. I went into full detail about this house from my dream. Anyway, apparently the house I described was the house I was born in. Not like, born. I was born in a hospital, but the house my family lived in for 2 years prior to my birth, that we all moved out of when I was 7 or 8 months old. At first I thought maybe my brain got it from pictures I had seen, but honestly the level of detail wasn't shown in any pictures we had of me at such a young age. Mostly they were close-ups, so you couldn't really see the background much. Best guess to this day is my brain picking up really old and obscure memories. Other than that I'm not sure how TF I knew anything about this house, let alone the layout, furniture setup, etc. I was taking a trip with my then girlfriend and we had to cross the Hudson River to get to where we were going. There are only a handful of bridges across, and I know them all from having grown up in the area. On that particular trip we were supposed to take the Bear Mountain Bridge. but I got off the wrong exit and passed it. We decided it wasn't a big deal. The next bridge, the Newborough Beacon, was actually closer to where we were going. It would just bring us over a little bit past our destination, but not enough to really matter, so we kept on driving, not really paying specific attention to where we were since it was probably 20-30 minutes until we got there. Well, we never crossed the Newborough Beacon that day. We also never crossed the Bear Mountain. And we certainly didn't drive an extra half an hour to the Mid-Hudson or turn around and go back to the tap. When we did take a minute to check where we were and how close the bridge was, we found we were already on the other side of the river. No bridge, we were just already there. So either there's a secret tunnel somewhere under the river, we had our memories erased, or we found some kind of spatial rift somewhere in the Hudson Valley. I used to work nights. It was a fairly simple job and I was pretty much alone in an abandoned building. I was basically security to prevent people from coming in and clearing people out if there were any. Occasionally you get some teens hanging about, the odd homeless person or some YouTubers filming, but nothing out of the ordinary. I understand that the night and your brain can play tricks on you in the dark and when you're tired, but I don't know how to explain what I saw, and I'm sure there is a logical explanation for it. I just went into a room. It was pretty much empty. I saw 3 shadows on the wall, but there was nothing to explain how the 3 human shadows were there. It was just really creepy and I got really bad vibes. So I just went out and I saw a very tall, slim, not of this world figure on the other end of the hallway. So that was me done. I know there's probably a reasonable explanation for it, but it was certainly unexplainable at the time. Went hiking late at night with my buddy when something big and bright flew right over us above the tree line. It was so bright we couldn't even look at it, and whatever it was, it didn't make a sound. Actually, it was probably the most quiet moment of my life. I remember saying what the F, but no sound came out of my mouth. Only lasted a few seconds and it was over. I was driving home from work on the back roads and was driving behind a car that was the same make, model, and year of my car, just a different color. Further down the road, we both get into the turn lane to turn left onto a long, straight road with open fields on either side. The car in front of me turns onto this road and I wait for a car to pass, and then turn as well. It takes less than 5 seconds. However, when I turn onto the road, the car that had been driving in front of me was nowhere to be seen. This road has no turn-offs and it's long and straight, so you can see pretty far ahead of you. The car had just vanished and I still think about it today. I have a dash cam now, but I wish I had had one back then because I question what actually happened that day. I was in RA when I was in college. All the RAs would come back a week before the winter semester started for training, which meant no students were back in the dorms. We were the only ones in the building. One night, I heard the door to my shared bathroom open. The sound of the doorknob turning woke me up, so I kind of groggily said my suitemate's name. She would sometimes come through the bathroom to talk or ask me for advice. Then I realized my suitamate was on an extended holiday in Italy, so no one should have been in our suite at all. I immediately shot up and looked toward the bathroom door. It was almost pitch black in my room, but next to the bathroom door, I could see the perfect outline of a human face wearing a flat-brimmed hat. I couldn't see the details of the face, but I could see shadows where the eyes, mouth, and nose would have been. It was as if someone was standing next to the door, staring at me. I had no idea what to do because no one was back in the dorms. I knew that the nearest RA was 2 floors away and wouldn't hear me scream for help. I stared at the face for a few seconds, and it stared back. Then I shifted slightly on the bed and it completely disappeared. I got up to check the door, and it had been closed the whole time. It's been almost 7 years and it still freaks me out when I think about it. When I was young, my parents and I relocated across the country to Maine. We lived in a very small town and our house was old, beat up and on many acres deep in the forest. It had 2 stories, with the top story being the main level and the bottom story being the bedroom level. My bedroom had several large windows that looked out into the forest. I don't remember having curtains or blinds, but I'm sure I must have, because my mother never forgot details like that when decorating my bedrooms as a child. But I must have left them open one night. I remember waking up in darkness, with a faint glowing orb of light hovering just outside my window. I watched it in utter terror as it went slowly across one window, and then the next before pausing, flashing briefly into my bedroom. before shifting into the third and final window and disappearing altogether. I was so upset by the ordeal that I went and woke my parents up, and my stepfather stormed the backyard with his gun in hand. There was nothing and no sign of the strange orb. My eyes are watering as I write this. Deep down, as an adult looking back, I realized that orb was anything but magic. It was someone's flashlight. It never happened again, but I'm still afraid of having window blinds open at night. I was once standing in line at Target. A mother and her, I guess, 3-year-old were in front of me in the checkout lane. I never met them before in my life. The child was riding in the shopping cart and the mother went forward to better unload it. The child looks dead at me, smiles, laughs and said my first name. Very clearly, twice. I have an uncommon first name, which made it even stranger. I once saw someone who looked and dressed exactly like me, with my mannerisms and posture, standing outside a pub I had visited only a week earlier around the same time in the evening. He was finishing a smoke and went back inside a few seconds after I'd been able to notice and get a good look at him. I smoked at the time as well, so it was something I'd have been doing. Not sure if I saw a glimpse of my own past from a third-person perspective or what, or if I just have a twin somewhere in Dublin. 4 Amish men in a room counting money with a money counter while simultaneously weighing out my ounce of weed. Just wasn't what I was expecting. A long time ago, when I was in preschool, school had just ended and I was the first one, adult or child, at the exit, which was a tall gate with one of those C-shaped latches that slips over a pole to keep the gate shut. I walked up to it and reached for the latch, but alas, I was very small and the latch was at least 3 feet above me. I stepped back and decided to just wait for the adults to come set me free, but then the latch just lifted and the gate opened. I saw it clearly. There was nobody around and no one touched it. Still have no idea what that could have been. Childhood telekinesis? Who knows? You're a wizard, Harry. My dad, sister and I all saw something that wasn't an animal and wasn't human. This was in winter 2015 in rural Saskatchewan. We were driving and it ran out in front of us on the road. It was so fast it was a dark blur, but we all agree we saw long angly limbs like a deer, but it had human looking arms and legs. We still talk about it. My best guess is that it was a black bear with mange or some other disease that caused it to be hairless. They look absolutely terrifying without hair. Their legs look human and longer, and their face is all cheekbones. https img.com jpg aww poor mangy bear. A very badass Great Dane I knew, a former neighbor's dog, was so afraid of a month-old kitten that he ran into the deepest room of his home and didn't stop quivering and whimpering for several hours. For context, he wasn't a timid dog. Little over a month before the mentioned incident, a drunk man attempted to break into their home at night and the dog bit half of his left foot off. P.S. Rest in peace, Scoob. Animals are very cautious around babies of another species. They know mom is around somewhere and will fight to the death to protect them. When me and my best friend were teenagers, we were walking home during the wee hours of the morning when a drunk guy basically acted like we knew him and invited us to eat. For some reason, we actually came with him and we ate at this 24/7 joint, where he told us about his adventures around the world, showed pictures, etc. We hung out until it was around 5 AM and walked home together. I have no idea who he effing was. I still don't. Probably just a time traveler wanting to hang with a historical figure before they got famous. I was driving one night in a really foul mood and speeding. Like when I say speeding I mean at least 25 over the limit. Anyway, this car gets behind me and for some reason I can just tell it wasn't a cop. It was a full tinted Chevy truck with weird lights on it, like comically large aftermarket front headlights. Once it got behind me I got a really eerie feeling I can't explain. Like my body just knew something was wrong. Anyway, I figured if it was a cop they would light me up for speeding, but for some reason they just kept pace with me, also speeding themselves. So at this point I'm getting a little weirded out, so I turn off the freeway and they follow me. I turn into a gas station and get out. I figure if I'm going to get axe murdered at least the cameras will pick it up and give my family some closure. Something just didn't sit right with me. I knew something was up. As I'm getting out of my car the truck rolls its windows down. and what I saw still haunts me to this day. It was a heavily disfigured guy, the only likes of which I can compare to that guy Rocky Dennis from the movie about the guy with a crazy disfigured head who falls for that girl who loves him for him and not the abomination that is his face. And he starts to motion me with his finger like telling me to come closer. I don't care if he was going to give me the winning Powerball numbers, there was no way in hell I was going to approach his car. I bolt inside the gas station. At this point my whole body is shaking. I try and tell the clerk what's going on as they stare at me, probably thinking I'm drunk or high off my A, as my story doesn't make any sense. I go to look outside and the truck is gone. I still have nightmares to this day. He was trying to warn you about the murderer in your backseat, or he was trying to warn you how going 25 over causes accidents that can horrifically disfigure you or the other driver. By dangerously chasing after you in an indignant rage. My grandfather told me a really cool story. There's a couple of things that grow or rot in trees that glow. Google foxfire. He saw an owl completely covered in this stuff flying around at night sometime in the 1930s. Google foxfire. Mozilla Chrome. Standing outside of a convenience store, I saw two different cars park, about a minute or so apart, and go in the store. It was obvious the two didn't know each other, at least it seemed. After shopping, they each left in the other car. Still can't explain it today without going down the CIA conspiracy route. I don't know why I read these creepy threads at midnight right before bed. When I worked in the medical field, I had a dream one night about a patient of mine, a very kind elderly woman, whom I visited once or twice a week. In the dream she came to me, dancing, and called out to me that she wasn't hurting anymore. I was so happy watching her dance after seeing her decline for years. When I got to work the next morning, I told my co-workers about the dream, and later that morning we got the call from her daughter that she had passed away the night before. I cannot explain that, but I am glad I had told my co-workers about it before the call and not after, otherwise they'd never have believed me. Such a bizarre experience, but so wonderful to feel she was at peace. I'll preface this by saying I don't really believe in the paranormal or superstitions, although I find these topics super interesting. But something really weird happened one night after leaving a movie theater with a friend that I've never been able to rationalize. We had just watched a horror movie as well, so we were definitely in that spooky mood. During our drive home out of the city, I lived in the country, we counted 3 cars pulled over in different areas on the road. As we get onto the highway we count about 8 more, in various locations, all a decent distance apart, so it's not like they're yielding to an ambulance or something like that. We get about halfway to my house and we ended up counting a total of 12 cars before my friend freaks out and begs me to take a back road. He was convinced it was a sign that we may get in a collision or a road accident of some kind. We were silent the rest of the ride home. I've brought it up to him once or twice since then and he gets really defensive and shuts it down immediately. It really bothered him. It's definitely weird and I can't explain it, but it makes for an interesting story. I was having a sleepover at home with a friend from school. We were watching a film and suddenly the weirdest thought comes to me. Her dog has just passed. Obviously I cannot just blurt that out, so I weirdly ask in the middle of the film, "Hey, by the way, how was your dog?" She was quite surprised obviously. I had never met her dog and she doesn't talk much about it. She just mentioned she had one. She answered that he is aging but well. We moved on, but I couldn't shake a weird feeling. Anyway, she goes home the next day and calls me after a while. She asked, "Why did you ask about my dog yesterday? How did you know? He passed away last night, around the same time you asked about him." I was both shocked and unsurprised at the same time. I don't have an explanation. It seems like a weird coincidence since her dog was not something usually on my mind. It never happened to me again. I once met this young homeless guy, probably about 10 years ago. Acted like he knew me. When I said I had no idea who he was, he said, "Isn't your name Bedmonger and you work in radio broadcasting?" I got right freaked out cause I had been applying to colleges for radio and there was no reason for him to know my name. I said no, but I wanted to work in radio. "Who are you?" He responded saying it wasn't important and to ignore him as sometimes he gets confused between the present and the future, and just left. I never saw him again. It threw me off completely. I abandoned the idea to go into radio almost out of fear. Like and subscribe if you are new to this channel. And don't forget to click the notification bell icon to get updated to our daily AskReddit stories.